You are listening to the Air Raid Hour with host Judge Mathis, dog, Tilt Money, dog, presented by the fine folks over at the Cover1 Sports Network, dogs. Bills Mafia, let's go!
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour. Buffalo Bills versus Tennessee Titans Monday Night Football pregame show. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, doing a little bit of a mashup this evening since it's the Cover1 Roundup and the Air Raid Hour typically on Monday night. So doing a little mashup here. Sitting here with me is David Faux from the Cover1 Roundup. Together this evening, we are the Bills guys. This is the Air Raid Hour / Cover1 Roundup presented by Cover1 and Picasso's Pizza. And Dave, 10 days since the last Bills game. Has it been too long? Like, is there such thing as too long in between football games?
Yes. It would be one thing if they had just played the Thursday game and then played that following Sunday, like yesterday. But or if they had just played on that first Sunday and then played today. But doing both is just like, this is too long. It's too weird. And now next Sunday they're going to be playing, and it's going to feel weird because like this is literally the first Sunday with Bills football. It's very weird, very unnatural.
It was so many days that it gave Gabriel Davis an opportunity to get hurt, which is what we're going to lead off the show with in a second, because he's on the inactive list. But before we get started, this show is brought to you by Picasso's Pizza. They're the flagship sponsor of this program. 4 great locations: Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Buffalo Pizza since 1980. Hand-cut cup and char pepperonis. You can order online at picassospizza.net. And if you're an out-of-towner like us, you can even get it mailed to your home. And I can tell you from experience, it's just as good as getting it fresh from the restaurant. Again, that is picassospizza.net. All right, let's get started with the inactive list. It just dropped about 5 minutes ago for both teams. If you count Trey White, the Buffalo Bills are down 4 legitimate players, 3 starters, 1 solid role player in this football game. Ed Oliver, Tim Settle, 2 of our key cogs in the middle of that defense out. Gabriel Davis sprained that ankle on Friday. He is out, along with Cam Lewis, Baylon Spector, Tommy Doyle, and Tommy Sweeney. So we're going to get to see Khalil Shakir and Quentin Morris for the first time here in week 2. The Titans, they have quite the injury report as well. Starting cornerback Christian Fulton is out. Passing down running back, who had 2 touchdowns last week, Dontrell Hilliard, is out. DeMarco Jones is out, as well as Derrick Tezuka. I think I pronounced that last name right, but he's the bottom of the barrel player, so it's not all that important. But let's start with the big one here. Gabriel Davis, late addition to the injury report on Friday. What do you think about that injury, and how does it affect the Buffalo Bills heading into this football game here?
Well, it's the obvious is the fact that the Bills don't necessarily have a ton of guys that play on the boundary. But the other that's kind of underselling, because he really can do so many different things at different areas of the formation. They like to bring him in as a blocker and in the slot, and even closer to the lineman. But there's a lot of different things that they're going to miss. My question is going to be, what will they do regarding, because we assume Khalil Shakir is probably going to be the guy to replace him outside. But given the way the Bills used Stephon Diggs, both outside and in the slot against the Rams last week, you kind of wonder, are they going to continue with that sort of approach, or are they just going to stick Diggs on the boundary because he's the surefire guy that you have on the boundary now, with Khalil Shakir being a rookie, and just sort of keep McKenzie and Crowder in the slot rotating and platooning there. So that's my main question. And then, this might also require a little bit more from Dawson Knox as a blocker rather than just as a receiver in this particular game. Now that Tommy Sweeney is inactive, you're going to see a lot of Quentin Morris as well. Whose abilities really have been more of as a receiver rather than a blocker. So it's one thing that can affect a whole lot of different things, but it'll be interesting to see how they adjust to all that.
Yeah, Jason M comes in and says it also stinks that it was so late in the week, so Shakir had less time to prepare for that specific role.
Yeah.
And Steven Burns comes in and says they might miss his blocking the most. He is the best run blocking receiver the Buffalo Bills have.
For sure.
That is the reason why when you look at snap counts from last week, Gabriel Davis played, I think, almost like every offensive snap, and Stephon Diggs was taken off the field like 15, 16 times. It's because Gabriel Davis is that trusted run blocking wide receiver. And on top of that, his touchdown last week was pretty much based off of they respected him so much as a blocker that they bit when he went out into coverage on that play action. So a lot to be missing there. So when I look at how they're going to replace him, obviously a lot of people want to look at Khalil Shakir. And I think Khalil Shakir will get some runs specifically on the boundary. But I think Jamison Crowder and his experience is going to work his way into the lineup. I think you'll see the Bills go a little bit smaller. And a great comment here from Bills Mafia Man 55. I think we might see Jay Kumaro more this evening than we might think.
It's not a bad point, actually.
I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being the wide receiver with the third or the fourth highest snap counts. I guess that could be considered a spicy take. But when you look at this Tennessee Titans team, No, go ahead if you had a point here. Sorry.
But yeah, I mean, it's no, it's my fault. It's not great connection, but I mean, Kumaro's blocking ability is going to be certainly something that could be a real factor here. And is it possible that Touchdown Jesus actually gets his touchdown? Playing against a Bible Belt team of all teams. I mean, it's possible. It's possible.
It's what's confusing to me is I think the Bills are going to be confused because the rule is you're only allowed to throw to him when he's in the end zone. So when he's on the field between the 20s, that might confuse some people. But
this is why you practice, right?
I still think back to that game last year. I think it was the Jets game where sort of that touchdown that Gabriel Davis had last week, they ran like that same exact play with Jay Kumaro because it's one of the staples in their offense. And Jay Kumaro just like flat out dropped one. I think it was against the Jets last year on one of those, the Patriots. Yeah. On one of those rollouts. So he's got some redemption. Touchdown Jesus needs some redemption, but the Tennessee Titans like to attack heavy defensive back sets. They like to be out there in nickel. They like to throw like a third safety out there. Like they like to have these DB heavy sets. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Bills counter with some size, whether it be Jay Kumaro or with Tommy Sweeney out of the lineup now, inactive for Quentin Morris, who it appears to me the Buffalo Bills have more confidence in Quentin Morris as an offensive player than Tommy Sweeney as an offensive player. It was just injury that kept him out last week. Yeah. Maybe we see more traditional 12 personnel. The Bills go heavy to counter the DBs that the Tennessee Titans throw at the Buffalo Bills this week. Do you think maybe there could be a bigger role or a role for Quentin Morris, or is he going to be like Tommy Sweeney, who pretty much only plays in garbage time and on special teams?
I think that there's potential for a role with Quentin Morris, but I think the real question is going to be how they end up using Reggie Gilliam. Because I mean, Gilliam obviously listed as a fullback on this roster at the moment. But more than that, I mean, he's played tight end before. This is somebody who can do a lot of different things. And in this particular game, one of your other guys, Gabe Davis, is asked to or is not able to do anything because he's out, and he's normally asked to do a lot of different things. You want somebody to be able to move around and create little mismatches and sort of break the rules of the defense a little bit. I think Reggie Gilliam and potentially Quentin Morris could be those types of guys.
Looking at the Buffalo Bills and how they utilized their personnel against the LA Rams, the Bills ran 11 personnel for 34 plays. They ran 14 plays in 22 personnel. That was pretty much exclusively until the game was out of hand. The only 2 personnel packages the Buffalo Bills rolled out against the LA Rams. You saw them utilize quick passing. 81% of their throws in that game were quick passes. Josh Allen was getting the ball out quicker than we've ever really seen him get the ball out to slow down a guy like Aaron Donald. You look across the sideline at our opponent this week, they have a very good interior defensive player in Jeffrey Simmons. We didn't really see a focus on the run or shot plays until the second half, which really helped us to score those, to score more points than we did in the first half. Do we see that quicker this week? Do we see maybe a focus on Devin Singletary, or do we see some shots down the field quicker? Or are the Buffalo Bills going to be patient and bide their time like they did last week against the LA Rams? I think I might have lost David there, so we're gonna remove him from the screen there. I think I lost David, so maybe he can come back. Is he back? Are you back? Can you hear me? Sorry,
I can hear you.
No, okay. So do you think it's gonna be? Do you think the Buffalo Bills will maybe take some more risks in the first half that they weren't willing to take against the Rams, or do you think it's going to be pretty much the same exact game plan, dink and dunk, or do you think they maybe try to get that focus on the running game earlier?
I think that we're going to see a lot of play action earlier, because I think that they want to take advantage of what will be the weak point of that defense, which is really that second level with the linebackers. They have some really great safeties in Amani Hooker and Kevin Byard. They have a really solid defensive line with Jeffrey Simmons and Bud Dupree. And they tend to stay pretty disciplined for the most part, but the linebackers are definitely a weakness for that team. I think they really want to attack that. And I think going play action early to try and confuse them and get them like thinking early, and then coming back with the run later on later drives could really keep those linebackers thinking and processing rather than reacting. I think that that's the way you want to keep going after that defense. It should just keep hitting that weak spot as many times as possible, because that's what's going to slow down that pass rush, and it might even tempt them to just bring them as blitzers more often rather than trying to get them to read and process play action constantly or diagnose a particular run fit off of an RPO or whatever. I think just bringing them in as blitzers, and then you can, that opens things up real quick for some quick game to not just be 5-6 yard gains, but then turn into something a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. It'll be really interesting to see if the Buffalo Bills just attack those linebackers. So whether it's Dawson Knox getting more involved this week, or utilizing the slot receivers like McKenzie and Crowder, whether it's getting Reggie Gilliam involved in the passing game or getting the ball out into the hands of the running backs, whatever that involves, just attacking those linebackers and David Long and Zach Cunningham should definitely be a priority. Because if you look at this Titans defense, pretty stout up front with guys like Simmons and Dupree and Autry and DeMarcus Walker and Tart and Weaver. Like, they got a solid front seven there outside of those two linebackers. It's going to be interesting to see if the Bills will have a chance to really exploit what's going on at cornerback for Tennessee. Fulton is out with the injury. He was their leading snap. He led the corners in snap count last week. Roger McCreary is a rookie now going mano-a-mano versus Stephon Diggs. And you have Caleb Farley, who could still be on a pitch count, really a snap count, because this last week was his first game back from an ACL that he tore against the Bills the last time he played the Buffalo Bills. So whether it's Caleb Farley or it's Chris Jackson or it's Josh Kalu, the Buffalo Bills might be looking for an opportunity in the passing game to be exploiting. And that's what's so difficult about missing Gabriel Davis in this football game, as I think we lost David there. So I'm going to go back to Solo for a second. So it's going to be really interesting to see if the Bills can sort of take advantage of that corner without Gabriel Davis in the lineup. Let's transition now here to the Buffalo Bills defense. We've been talking about their offense. I want to transition to their defense, specifically their defense versus the Tennessee Titans offense. You look at the Titans offense, they're missing a Dontrell Hilliard. Kyle Phillips is going to play, but he might be on a snap count because of his injury. He was one of their better receivers last week. Tannehill is obviously their quarterback. Derrick Henry, Hassan Haskins at running back. You got Robert Woods, Westbrook-Ikhine, Treylon Burks, Kyle Phillips at wide receiver. They played a lot of tight ends last week in Jeff Swaim, Austin Hooper, and Chigon Okonkwo. Their offensive line left to right is Taylor Lewan, Aaron Brewer, Ben Jones, Nate Davis, and Nicholas Petit-Frere. No Ed Oliver, no Tim Settle. What are you expecting from the Buffalo Bills defense this week as they try to counter this Tennessee Titans offense?
This is why you spend all these picks and money on this defensive line, so that you have depth that you trust and can work with. Obviously Von Miller just gonna do what he does. We know he what he can do. With the interior is going to be the thing that could end up being a bit problematic. Yeah. Because you have Daquan Jones healthy, which is good because you need that solid two gapping guy in the middle. But you also you're going to miss that presence with that and Tim Settle, honestly. But someone like Jordan Phillips and even Braden Bryant can do enough, I think. And they just got to hold up. And this Titans offensive line is not what it's been in the past. So I don't feel quite as worried as I would have been in previous years. It's still got some good guys, Ben Jones and Taylor Lewan, but a rookie in Nicholas Petit-Frere going against Greg Rousseau, who, had himself a pretty good game last week against the Rams. And Taylor Lewan, he's a pretty solid left tackle, but, it takes more than solid to defend consistently against Von Miller. So I think that as long as they're able to keep their gap integrity on that defensive line, particularly on those run fits, that's what's really going to matter the most for them. You just got to play super sound, super smart. You can't let yourself get too far up the field. You can't over pursue. You just got to keep your lanes and your wits about you, especially when you're going against somebody like Derrick Henry, who can, just sort of take things over at times. And despite popular opinion, the Bills have actually handled Derrick Henry fairly well in the last two meetings. He just happened to throw out some, highlight worthy stiff arms as he is wont to do. And like he kind of destroyed them when he maybe didn't. Late in the game last year, I think you could tell the defense was getting gassed, and they just kept getting gashed by Henry late. But ultimately, like, they've done a fairly good job of containing Henry in the games against.
Yeah, you look at the Bills defense in week one, that seems like it was probably more the exception to the rule, what they tried to do against the LA Rams because of some of the weapons that they had. 54 snaps with a light box, 60 snaps with a two high shell last week. They only blitzed one time. They had 47 four-man rushes, 41 of their snaps, almost 2/3 of their defensive snaps, they utilized zone coverage. I think some of that carries over this week. I don't know if all of that carries over. I think the part that carries over is I think the lack of blitzing is going to carry over. The Titans, they run a lot of play action and they like to get the ball out rather quickly. I think that the Buffalo Bills, you're going to want to maybe not try to rush a ton of guys and over pursue. You're just going to want to try to keep Ryan Tannehill in the pocket and let the defensive line just try to eat on their own. If it doesn't work early, you might try to send some additional rushers or scheme some things up. But I think for the most part, you're not going to see the Buffalo Bills rely too heavily on scheme blitzes this week. I think you're going to see a lot of those 4-man rushes continue. Because like I said, you don't want to over pursue in the run game. You don't want to let them get these big plays off of quick hitters because they dump the ball off to a running back who then picks up, 15, 20 yards, or one of their tight ends who picks up 15, 20 yards. I think Anthony Prohaska had a great tweet earlier in the week. He said, hey, the wide receiver struggled creating separation, and Tannehill struggled with his progressions last week against the New York Giants. Force him off his first read and make him play from the pocket. And I think that's what the Buffalo Bills are going to try to do up front this week. And then the one thing I do think that sort of they try to differentiate from last week, and again, this goes back to another great tweet that I saw from Pro Anthony earlier in the week. You might see some more press coverage this week. It's definitely something that guys like Christian Benford and Kyer Elam, who are more physical and more aggressive, they're a lot more comfortable with that kind of stuff. So again, Pro Ant tweeted, wide receivers struggled creating separation, and Tannehill struggled with his progressions. Would love to see more press from the Bills in week 2. With Tannehill's mobility, press zone may be better. So that's something I'm looking for from the Buffalo Bills this week, is to maybe get a little bit more physical with their cornerback play, because I don't know. Are these Tennessee Titan wide receivers underwhelming, or are they just still getting their legs under them? Because Robert Woods is only targeted twice, and those wide receivers struggle to create separation. What do you think about that wide receiver room, Dave, that the Tennessee Titans have? Because I tried making like a depth chart, and it's just so like they have no X. It's just a bunch of like slot guys. Yeah. I look at it, and that's it's weird.
They're kind of hoping that Treylon Burks becomes that X type of guy, but he's not there yet, and he was never going to be there as a rookie, just because like he wasn't super refined coming out of Arkansas. He was more of a height, weight, speed guy, and he was just always going to take time, but like the time is kind of now if you want to win this year, which like, based on the decisions that they've made in the offseason, I don't think they really care about winning this year. But that's a discussion for another time. Robert Woods is easily the most experienced on this roster, and we know what he can do. But he's also coming off an ACL injury from the middle of the season. Like he's probably still, more or less trying to get his legs back under him. Treylon Burks is still learning things. And Kyle Phillips, who was their best receiver last week, it seemed, other than Hilliard coming out of the backfield, he's going to be out for this game. So it's just, what exactly about this offensive group is going to really scare you, especially when going against this defense. So to me, I think you just got to kind of load up the box a little bit, or at least play the run a little bit more, because if you can just shut down that run game as much as you possibly can, I mean, what exactly are they going to do in the passing game that scares you? There's just really not much there. I can't imagine a team that is so typically well disciplined defensively with coverages is really going to be scared of or get taken advantage of by this receiving group in particular.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Titans personnel groupings week 1, you could tell that they were trying to get the opposing defense into nickel. 34 snaps from the Tennessee Titans and 11 personnel. They were trying to get that smaller guy in the football field. Luckily for the Bills, Teron Johnson, he is one of the better tacklers. He's really good at, fitting the run and doing those things. It might be interesting. Like we've seen them play Saran Neal against teams like the Patriots when they go out and they try to run heavy. The Titans, 34 snaps and 11 personnel, but then they had 7 and 12, 7 and 13 personnel, 3 tight ends, led the freaking league in 3 tight end sets. Jeff Swain played way more than I thought he would for that football team. And then they had 6 snaps and 21. So that's almost, that's 20 snaps right there in heavy personnel for the Tennessee Titans. So this could be a Terrell Bernard game. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sure when the Titans come out in nickel, I'm assuming you're going to see Teron Johnson just because the Buffalo Bills base is nickel. But when they go into those 3 tight end sets, when they go into that 12 personnel, I think Teron Johnson's coming off the football field, even with maybe even if that third tight end is a guy like Chigankonkwo, who is a rather decent receiving threat, even though he's a rookie and he's young. Austin Hooper's a solid-ish receiving threat, but Jeff Swaim not so much. I think you see Terrell Bernard, and I think you see almost like a 60-40 split between Teron Johnson and Terrell Bernard based on the personnel the Titans were throwing out there last week against the Giants. Now, that could change. The Titans could come out and go heavy the whole freaking football game for all we know. They could come out and go 11 personnel the whole football game for all we know. But I think when you see 11, you're going to see Teron. I think when you see 12, you see 13, you see 21. I think Terrell Bernard makes his way out into the football field this week, which is not something you saw last week against the LA Rams. But, before we switch over here to special teams real quick, Ryan Tannehill last week, 10 for 12 for 151 yards on throws out of play action. Tannehill off of play action might be the biggest threat that this Tennessee Titans offense has, and it's definitely something the Buffalo Bills need to zero in on.
For sure.
All right, looking at special teams, Tyler Bass, solid. I'm expecting, I think, and I'm going to get to this later on in the show when we get to our game predictions. I think this is going to be a game where both teams play a lot of bend but don't break defense, and I think this could be a kicker game. I think it could be Tyler Bass versus Fat Randy. Like, I really do think that is what we're going to see. I think the Bills will have the capability and ability to score more touchdowns than the Titans, but I think you're going to see a decent amount of field goals from both teams because I think both the defenses are good enough to bend but not break, tonight. But who knows? Do we see Sam Martin today? Like, do we see him at all?
I think so. I mean, it would. Listen, I'm not saying
historic.
Seriously, it's getting to the point where it's like, when was the last time I saw a punt? But the real, I mean, this defense does have quite a few good players on it. I mean, we obviously Bud Dupree, Jeffrey Simmons, and these two safeties are probably the thing that I'm probably most concerned about. Just because they have, in particular, Kevin Byard. I mean, he's made plays against this team before. He's a phenomenal safety. Amani Hooker is no joke either. And they have some talented corners that I think we're not 100% sure what they have there. But they all have a good amount of talent at that position. It's just, I imagine at some point that the Titans will find a way to force a 3-and-out. It may even be early. It may be, when the Bills are trying to figure out exactly what to do. But I'd be pretty shocked if they went yet another game without punting. And if they do go another game without punting, hopefully it's not because they committed 4 turnovers like they did against the Rams last week.
Yeah, and for the Titans, they have a pretty solid UDFA punter. One of the guys that was high on my draft board, and Ryan Stonehouse, had an awesome week last week. So that'll be interesting. With Shakir now active for the Buffalo Bills, that's something to look out for in this game. Who's returning punts? I thought Crowder looked good last week, but maybe you see Khalil Shakir back there now with him being active this week. And then here's where things could get interesting for the Tennessee Titans. And one of the advantages the Buffalo Bills could have, I could see if I had to predict which team was more likely to make a turnover on special teams, knock on wood, I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans this week because Dontrell Hilliard out. So they have a new kick returner and Trenton Cannon, journeyman guy, been on a bunch of different teams. So he's got some comfortability with kick returns, but Kyle Phillips is active today. He's got a shoulder injury. It looked pretty bad. He hurt it on the last drive. He barely practiced this week. He was in that non-contact jersey. Is he returning punts for you? And if not, is it Amani Hooker? Like, he's the second one on the depth chart. I think that the Titans are down to their backups on both the kick and punt return units, or their punt returner is a guy with a dinged shoulder. So to me, and he muffed a punt last week, Kyle Phillips. So to me, if I had to knock on wood, guess who's going to commit a turnover on special teams today? Maybe make that mistake that is really costly. My money is on the Tennessee Titans for sure.
I'd agree with that because, I mean, when you have a lot of people coming in and out of that position, the whole process of everything gets kind of wonky, and maybe somebody hits a lane that they're not supposed to. They go a certain direction, and then that screws up the blocking, which gives somebody an angle, to punch the ball out or come across. there's a billion other things that can happen on special teams, because special teams is just pure chaos. But it's going to be interesting, and for a team that under Mike Vrabel has really valued and done a really good job on special teams, it's going to be interesting to see exactly how they adjust to having or not having their usual returner out there. And as for the Bills and their return, I mean, I would assume that Khalil Shakir is going to be returning punts in this game, because they listed him coming out of the preseason as the primary punt returner. But then again, they also deactivated him against the Rams. So
that's what shocked me. That's what shocked me. So heading into the game against the Rams last week, my prediction was that Jamison Crowder was going to be inactive. That was my prediction all week. And Joe B of The Athletic, way more connected than me, was like, it's going to be Khalil Shakir. It's going to be Khalil Shakir. And I'm like, that's nuts. He's number one punt returner. It's not going to be Khalil Shakir. He's the number one punt returner. I'm like, who would return punts? No one on the active roster returned a single punt in the preseason, or we saw in training camp. And then sure enough, a guy who like wasn't reported to be taking any punt returns in training camp, a guy who didn't do it at all in the preseason, Jamison Crowder, ends up being the one returning punts last week. And he looked solid. Like he looked okay. So that was super interesting. And that was my big.
That's why you get somebody like a James Crowder, because he's just that veteran presence where, he's returned punts before. He's been in the slot before. He's even done some boundary work before. You throw him into that position, he's just there. He's ready to go. Yeah.
So that was my big L last week. I take at least 3 L's a pregame show. That was one of them. Speaking of taking L's, it's now our time to do our pregame superlatives and make some predictions. So I don't know if you've ever seen the Air Raid Hour pregame show, but we have a nice solid list of superlatives. I sent them to you that we run through the last half hour of every pregame show. And we start with our Take Me Higher player of the game. And this is a star player other than Josh Allen who has to step up for the Buffalo Bills to win. One of my favorite sayings, and I've been saying this for a couple of years now, is big time players make big time plays in big time games. And one of the reasons why I said that continually on the show is because I felt like, despite the fact that we had a really good roster, we might have been lacking that type of player. Like we just weren't getting that from Jerry Hughes. Now we have Von Miller. So I think this is a lot more interesting of a segment here, the Take Me Higher player of the game. I'm going to play our little introduction here. Then I'm going to pass it to you for your Take Me Higher player of the game. We're going to read off some comments. So make sure in the comment section, you're telling us who your Take Me Higher player of the game is and why. And then I will share mine.
Can you take me higher to a place where blind men see?
All right, Dave. So who is your?
I'm imagining that flying guy in the Cowboys Thanksgiving halftime.
If it wasn't for trademarking and copywriting, that video would be playing. Who is your Take Me Higher player of the game this evening?
My Take Me Higher player in this game is gonna end up being. I think it's going to be Khalil Shakir.
Ooh, interesting.
I think when you're being asked to be put in that position, right, of being somebody that they trust on the boundary, especially after the preseason that he had, and I think we as fans and as viewers kind of overrate preseason game performance a little more than we should. But, I mean, he performed well in the preseason. He seemed to perform well in training camp. They seem to like him. This is somebody who fell in the draft that a lot of people liked pre-draft. It just kind of seems like they want him to do something in this game. And whether that's returning punts or being the boundary guy or being this sort of inside-out boundary and slot guy, I don't know. But I think that this is somebody that they need a really solid performance out of. Somebody who, we talk about, who's going to be the team that makes the first mistake. And we talk about the Titans probably being that team because of their return situation. But I mean, when you're talking about a 5th round rookie being put in that position, more often than not, I think that would be the target for somebody like that. So you gotta kind of be the guy and not be somebody that makes that mistake.
Yeah, it's going to be really weird for Khalil Shakir when he looks across the Tennessee sideline and sees future him in Robert Woods. That might be like a weird moment for him. But I remember in the preseason, in the pre-draft process, Chris Trapasso called Khalil Shakir the Cooper Kupp of this year's draft. So if Khalil Shakir wants to get us like 15, 16 catches for 180 yards and a touchdown, I wouldn't mind if Khalil Shakir wanted to do that today. But some good comments coming in. Charles G says Edmonds. Bills Mafia STF says Motor. Josh Clark, I really like this one. This would have been my second choice if you had taken my first choice, Dawson Knox. It is, I believe, Luke Knox's birthday today. So going against his hometown team in the Tennessee Titans, a lot to play for Dawson Knox. How productive is he going to be if he's tasked with staying back to block a guy like Jeffrey Simmons and a guy like Bud Dupree? I don't know. But maybe this week with those linebackers that the Titans have, he gets a little bit more active this week and has a bigger game. But my take me higher player of the game is going to be Tremaine Edmonds. I think run supporting and run fitting is going to be really important. The Tennessee Titans like to throw a whole bunch of tight ends out there on the field. So covering those tight ends is going to be important, and just not biting on the play action and being able to keep Ryan Tannehill in that pocket. I think Tremaine Edmonds his presence is going to be huge in order to shut down what the Tennessee Titans like to do, whether it is that play action stuff or whether it is running to Tremaine Edmonds, running Derrick Henry in light boxes. Tremaine Edmonds is going to be a big integral part in that. So I'm not going to sit here and predict like a pick six or a sack or a forced fumble, but I just think Tremaine Edmonds is going to be really important to what the Buffalo Bills want to do on defense today against the Tennessee Titans. All right. Up next is our wild card player of the game. This is a surprise player who you think could affect the outcome of this game. So hit us up in the comment section with your surprise player, your wild card player of the game, the player that could affect who could affect the outcome of the game.
Guys, why aren't the brakes working?
Because I cut the brakes! Wild card, bitches! Yeah! What?
So, Dave, I'll start with you, and then we'll get to the comment section. Who's your wild card player of the game? We got a couple in here in the comment section I already like, but we'll get to you, and then we'll get to them.
You brought him up earlier, and I think you're probably going to be right in a sense. I think it's going to be Terrell Bernard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if assuming that the Titans play a little bit more heavy sets, and the Bills respond by going to more 3 linebacker looks, then I mean you're asking a lot of Terrell Bernard. And I mean, if he is the type of guy that can step up and do something, I mean, he could really create a couple of different types of plays on defense that, could really affect how this game goes. I mean, it's not that it's, again, like you said, Teron Johnson is a very good nickel corner. One of the best in the NFL. And part of the reason why he's so highly regarded is because of his tenaciousness and ability to defend the run. But he's still, a relatively short, smaller player. And it's not that Terrell Bernard is some, big thumping, downhill, gonna attack you, Brandon Spikes type of linebacker either. But he does have a lot of athletic ability and can really just sort of shoot those gaps real quickly. I think if he just, comes downhill and shoots some of those gaps, I think that he can make some plays that maybe the Titans aren't really expecting, considering how much the Bills run nickel on defense. And if the Bills run more of that base look, I think that you could see a potentially big game from Terrell Bernard.
Yeah, some good comments coming in here in the comment section. Bills Mafia STF says Jaquan Johnson. Maybe the Bills give the Titans a taste of their own medicine with some 3 safety looks. I know Jaquan Johnson got a couple of snaps against the Rams. Well, I think he was on the field during Poyer's interception, to be honest. Or maybe he just makes a big play on teams. BFLO Mafia News. A couple people have said Jordan Phillips, but he also adds in Shaq Lawson, says they're going to get ejected in the fourth quarter for gang beating up Taylor Lewan with 6 sacks. We got Quentin Morris, Reed Ferguson, like I said, we had a couple of Jordan Phillips. Brewer and Bryant are going to be vital to this game. Got a couple of people coming in with Isaiah McKenzie, Kyer Elam, maybe a redemption game from James Cook. That would be nice.
Yeah.
And rantingly going with my guy here, and that is Jake Kummerow. I'm going with touchdown Jesus. I think Gabriel Davis's presence is going to be missed in the run game. I think that Kummerow sees more snaps than we think because of that. I think off of those play actions where Gabriel Davis usually feasts, I think that Jake Kummerow has a big catch or two in this game. Maybe gets a touchdown to live up to that moniker of touchdown Jesus. So I'm going with Jake Kummerow as my wild card player of the game. And that leads us into the third superlative here, the respect you player of the game. The opposing player, the Buffalo Bills, need to respect in order to win. So in a moment, Dave, I'll slide it over to you. And in the comment section, who's the opposing player that you fear the most, that you feel like the Buffalo Bills need to respect?
I pure, straight hate you. But God damn it, do I respect you.
So, Dave, who are you going with here as your respect you player of the game?
It's the obvious one, and it's Jeffrey Simmons. Yeah, I mean, I this dude's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, outside of Aaron Donald, I'm not sure that there's many other defensive tackles that are doing what Jeffrey Simmons does. And I'll tell you, one of the guys that he reminds me of, and I don't know how many people on this show who are watching us have seen a lot of Fletcher Cox in Philadelphia, but Fletcher Cox in his prime was just at times unblockable and just so freaking good and a total disruptor on the defensive line. Jeffrey Simmons is that type of player, but he might even be a little bit more juiced up. I mean, there are just things that dude can do that are absolutely crazy. I mean, he is somebody that the Bills are absolutely going to have to make a big focus and take him out of the game as much as they possibly can. And I mean, after what they did with Aaron Donald last week, I mean, he got a sack early on, beating Ryan Bates pretty cleanly. They adjusted more in the second half. Hopefully they're able to sort of do something similar in that regard, but it's going to be a tough one against Jeffrey Simmons. He is relentless.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, a bunch of people coming in and saying, Simmons easily. Davis Bryan says he's Ndamukong in his prime. Charles Clark was a little outside the box here, says Ryan Tannehill and his legs. You could throw Kevin Byard and Amari Hooker in here. That safety combo that the Titans have. I mean, Josh Allen went out of his way this week to talk about how good Kevin Byard is and how much better he needs to be this year in terms of like leading his receivers and doing those different types of things to counteract what Kevin Byard does. We mentioned Zach Cunningham and David Long sort of being the weak links of that defense. Behind them is a guy who, can clean up those mistakes in Kevin Byard. So keep an eye out for him. And then obviously, I mean, at the end of the day, Derrick Henry. I mean, that is the guy that you're going to want to focus in on. He's the guy that you not only need to stop, but you can't let trying to stop him also let other guys feast. I mean, we saw last year, AJ Brown. I mean, the guy went off because the Buffalo Bills were so honed in on Derrick Henry. I think you're going to see the Tennessee Titans try to get the ball into the hands of Robert Woods more in this game. 2 targets last week. I know he's coming off the ACL, but 2 targets for your number 1 wide receiver. I think that the Tennessee Titans are going to try to utilize Robert Woods, try to kill those Bills on the slants like they have in years past. So I wouldn't be surprised if Robert Woods becomes a focus of this Titans offense today, like AJ Brown was a season ago, and they try to get the football in his hands. So a ton of different players you can go with here, but definitely Simmons and Henry stick out as the 2 biggest ones. And that leads us to our second to last superlative here, and that is our fire sale, our hottest take of the game. So in the comment section, let us know, give us just your spiciest take of the game. It's okay to be wrong here. We're here to take chances, Bills Mafia, with our fire sale segment. So hit us up with your spiciest take of the game. Dave, I'll start with you, but first we got to play the clip.
Oh my God! We're having a fire sale. Oh, the burning! It burns me. Evacuate all the school children. Oh, mate. This isn't a fever. Sing, Gray. Can't even see where the knob is.
We've already got some people firing in. Big game from Dawson Knox. Shakir gets 100 yards. Josh DG says 6 sacks. JNJNQJ says, I don't think the run game will be useful for this Titans team. I'll get to some more in a moment. But Dave, what is your hottest take for this game?
I think Reggie Gilliam gets a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown.
Ooh, the Reggie Gilliam special on Monday Night Football.
I think that
like
there's
that.
just I think there's so many things that he could do. He first of all, great blocker. I mean, he's really becoming such a useful player, particularly as a blocker. He's phenomenal. But I mean, like we said before, he's somebody who's played a tight end before. You can move him around on this offense to different positions. He can be a mismatch guy in that sense. And I think if you give him the ball in the one, I think he gets in. You give him, an opportunity in the red zone, throw him out to him in the flat, maybe a little angle route even on the inside. I think that this could be a nice Reggie Gilliam game.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to top a 2-touchdown game from Reggie Gilliam in the hot take department. Let's see what the comment section's got. Josh Clark says Kyer Elam, 2 interceptions.
Love that.
Charles G says James Cook leads all running backs in total yards. That would be interesting. Josh G says Knox over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Davis Brian, says Khalil Shakir is the leading receiver. Bills easily cover the 10-point spread. It's another hot take. If the offense can stay firing on all cylinders. My take, I feel like, is spicy, but I think it's grounded a little bit more in reality than my usual hot takes. And I think this is a spicy take just because of the way the Buffalo Bills utilized their running backs last week. The way the running backs were running last week, you would have thought Devin Singletary would take over as the feature back in that second half. And the rotation, at least with Moss, just kept on coming. And it sort of baffled me a little bit. Not that Moss was inherently bad. He just wasn't as good as Devin Singletary was. Yeah. And then you had that fumble late in the game. But I think the heat had a lot to do with that. It's a cool, crisp, 70-degree night. The rain is gone in Buffalo tonight. I think Devin Singletary, my hot take is Devin Singletary is your feature back. I'm talking 15 to 18 carries, which would be like rare for the Buffalo Bills. I think that they are going to try to take advantage of these light boxes, the Aaron Cromer effect. They're going to try to run the football. The way that they sort of ran the football in the second half versus the Rams, where they came out at halftime and they were running more, and it was setting up that play action stuff deep. I think they try to do that in the first quarter of this football game. I think they come out with the mindset in the first quarter tonight like they came out in the third quarter against the Rams. So Devin Singletary, 15 carries, 100-plus yards, and a touchdown for Motor. That is my hot take of the game. And that leads us to our final superlative. It's time to paint a picture. It's time to go back to the future, our game predictions. Ladies and gentlemen, in the comment section, give us a score prediction and paint us a little picture, little not a paragraph, but paint us a little picture of what this football game is going to look like as we try to go back to the future here.
We're sending you back to the future.
Back to the future! Back to the future! Back to the future! Back to the future! Back to the future!
It's my favorite one at the end. Like Michael J. Fox was just giving up on that point. But Dave, throw us your score prediction and paint a little picture for us, and then we'll get to the comments in the comments section. What do you think this game is going to look like by the time the clock ticks 0?
I think this is a Bills 34, Titans 13 type of game.
Ooh, I would love that.
I think that the Bills, I think this is a close game in the first quarter. Maybe it's even something like 10-7 Titans in the first quarter. But I think Bills just continue to attack and attack and attack on offense. And I mean, there's really only so much that the Titans are going to be able to do offensively themselves. I just think that this team is too good to let a team that is kind of in their own sort of rebuilding, retooling phase of their franchise to let them beat them on Monday Night Football at home for their season opener. I just think that there's a lot of things that there's just too much for this Titans team to overcome. So I'm going 34 Bills, Titans 13.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to pick against the Bills today. Josh Allen released another hype video on his Instagram. The last 2 times he did that was before the Rams and before the Patriots, and we know what happened in those 2 games. And then this tweet from Bet365 USA. Josh Allen loves Monday Night Football. In his 5 career Monday Night Football games, he's got 14 touchdowns to 2 interceptions with 110.8 QBR. He's 8-3 in primetime games in his career. It's going to be hard to bet against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. We got some comments coming in the comment section. They seem to agree. David W says 35-24. Anna S says 31-14. Charles G says 1,000 to 0. I feel like at that point you should have just typed a billion. Bills by a billion there. CBTS Scully comes in and says 38-10. Steve Rose just says pain for the Titans. Josh A.J. Doan comes in and says 35-17. Defense gives us 7 and we dominate the second half again. Josh G 35-10. Seth 101 comes in and says 35-17 Bills. Josh is a monster day with 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's got to one up Tua, right? Like that's another thing too. Like Josh saw what Tua did and he's like, nah, not in my AFC East. He's got to one up Tua. Rantingly says 35-3 Bills, no punts, offense and defense dominates. Stephen Wetcher says 31-20. Whole bunch JNIN. I screwed that one up, but that person says 27-10. Titans won't be able to get the ball rolling, and a ton of other predictions coming in. So thank you guys so much. My prediction here is going to be 35-22 Bills. I think the Titans always play us scrappy. Mike Vrabel is a very good situational coach. We're down 4 starters. I think we still have overwhelmingly more talent than they do. You could tell last week, I mean, they lost to the New York Giants, and I know the New York Giants are 2-0, but that roster is bad. And I know it was week 1, and I know the Cardinals crushed them week 1 last year, and they went on to be the number 1 seed in the AFC, but the Bills are just on paper a much, much better football team than the Tennessee Titans. But I do think they play some scrappy ball. I do think it's a field goal fest. Both teams play bend but don't break defense, but the Buffalo Bills play it better en route to a 33-22 victory. Got about 5 minutes left. Something that was brought up in the comment section earlier that I want to throw out before we go. 3 snaps last game for James Cook. Fumbled and then never touched the ball again. How do you think the Buffalo Bills handled James Cook in this game? And how do you want him handled in this football game? Do you think we see a rebound from James Cook, or do you think we see him on a really short leash?
I think that they will give him an opportunity. I think they will try to sort of use him in the way that they wanted to against the Rams. And they're just going to take it on a play-by-play basis. You know, if he fumbles again, got to bring it back out. You know, but as long as he's doing his job, doing his 111th, I think that they will feel comfortable enough to just let him do what he needs to do in that game. I would like to see him get another chance. I don't want it to just be the Devin Singletary show, even though I do want it to be the Devin Singletary show because he is the best running back on this team. I don't want a like unnecessary rotation just for the sake of rotation, but I do think that I think they give Cook another chance to just, you know, do what he needs to do and try to reestablish himself a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I laid out in the preseason sort of how I wanted to see the running backs utilized, and I really hope that it finally comes to fruition. I mean, to me, Devin Singletary would be your number 1 guy between the 20s. Zach Moss would be your guy in the red zone, and James Cook would just be like your 2-minute running back. he would be the one giving Devin Singletary the breather, not Moss. When you're in between the 20s, he'll be utilized in the passing game, etc. So like that's how I want to see this running back room operate right now. Whereas like Singletary is that first and second down guy, Cook is that third down guy, Moss is that goal line guy. Like that's what I want to see. I hope we see that come to fruition today, because I do think that in order for the Bills to be successful today, they're going to have to challenge those light boxes. So it's going to be interesting to see which running back will step up and take advantage of that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's about 20 minutes until kickoff. It's that early 7:15 start. Before you guys head out of here, just want to let you guys know that we have this thing at Cover1 called the Cover1 One Pass. I can't encourage you enough to sign up for the Cover1 One Pass. It's $57 a year. You get a Cover1 shirt, a decal with your subscription. You get access to our premium Slack channel where we have awesome conversations. You get exclusive members only content like articles from our great writers, in-depth analysis, including scheme, play and player breakdowns, scouting reports, analytics, you name it, access on unlimited devices, and a whole bunch of behind the scenes content as well. So the number one way to help us out here at Cover1, if you like what it is we're doing here, is sign up for that Cover1 One Pass and become a part of the Cover1 community. Before we head out, Dave, talk a little bit about, maybe for anyone who in the chat right now or viewing right now that has never, for some reason, has never at 7 p.m. on Monday clicked on the Cover1 YouTube and watched the Cover1 Roundup. Talk about the work that you and Kyle do, and I believe you do some writing as well. So speak to that as well before we head out of here.
So on a normal Monday night after the Bills play on a Sunday at 1 p.m., Kyle Salagi, another Cover1 contributor, and I host the Cover1 Roundup. We do a lot of news. We do a lot of kind of weird, wonky, strange, off-the-wall segments. We like to have a little more fun. We like to go a little off the walls. We tend to have some longer shows. Sometimes we even push up against the air raid hour in the off season when there's no Monday Night Football to compete with. But we like to have some fun. We like to have fun, but also provide some different and good analysis. We like to do our homework as well. So check us out. We like to have a good time on there.
Yeah, that's the Cover1 Roundup, Mondays, 7 p.m., air raid hour, Mondays at 9 p.m. Little programming note. You got 3 straight hours of Cover1 coverage tomorrow night. It's going to be the Going Deep pod from 7 to 8. The air raid, we're going to do a little special 1-hour show from 8 to 9 tomorrow night. And then the Film Room boys are going to take over at 9. So Cover1's going to have you covered tomorrow night here on the YouTube channel for all of your post-game analysis. Don't forget don't miss, set your reminder, set your notification for Greg and Aaron post-game as well. Obviously, it'll be a festivity where the Uncle Jumbos will be flowing for celebratory reasons. And before you head out of here, smash that like, share. I say it every week. I want to grow this thing organically. So if you feel like you have somebody in your life, whether it's friend or family, who would enjoy this pregame show, Cover1 Roundup, a Cover1 One Pass membership, the air raid hour, any section of Cover1, click that little share button, copy the link, and shoot them a text or shoot them an email and let them know what's going on here at Cover1 so they can become a part of this Cover1 community. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. It's 15 minutes till kickoff. Go to the bathroom. Go put on whatever clothes you were wearing last week, underwear and all. Hopefully it's not washed. And get your food prepared. Brace yourselves for Monday Night Football. You always get to watch that like 4K, which is cool. They got like better cameras for prime time. And listen to Louis Riddick, Dan Orlovsky, and Steve Levy call the Bills game. And that chip on our shoulder for not having Buck and Aikman this week in Orchard Park. So, ladies and gentlemen, a long-winded way of saying this. Until next time, go Bills. You gotta say go Bills.
Go Bills.
Are we having fun yet?